The showroom was a cathedral of glass and steel, a silent, gleaming temple dedicated to the gods of speed and status. Polished chrome drank the cold, artificial light, reflecting a distorted world of impossible perfection. It was a place where value was measured in horsepower and price tags, where human worth was judged by the watch on a wrist or the brand of a handbag. Into this temple walked Eliza. She was a gentle anomaly, a soft brushstroke of gray wool in a landscape of sharp, metallic edges. Her coat was simple, immaculately clean but clearly well-loved, its fibers softened by years of loyal service. Her shoes were practical, and the small leather bag she carried had the quiet dignity of an object valued for its purpose, not its prestige. She moved with a gentle, observant grace, her eyes full of a quiet curiosity, tracing the elegant lines of a silver convertible. She didn't see a status symbol. She saw a work of art, a beautiful machine born from a dream. And in this place, that was her first mistake. If you believe that true worth lies not in what a person owns, but in who they are, then be sure to subscribe and join our community for more stories that touch the heart. From across the polished floor, Marcus Thorne, the dealership's top sales manager, saw her. He didn't see a potential client. He saw a problem, a smudge on his perfect picture. His eyes, practiced in the art of instant appraisal, swept over her from head to toe in a fraction of a second. The verdict was swift, silent, and damning. No designer labels. No ostentatious jewelry. No aura of casual wealth. He saw only a waste of his time. He straightened his silk tie, the knot a perfect, hard dimple, and began his slow, deliberate approach. He walked not with the eagerness of a salesman, but with the predatory patience of a wolf circling a lost lamb. Eliza, absorbed in the gentle curve of a fender, didn't notice him until his shadow fell over her. "Can I help you?" he asked. Yes. Words themselves were benign, the standard greeting of his trade. But the tone was a weapon. It was laced with a chilling condescension, a bored impatience that implied she was an interruption, an inconvenience. It was a tone designed to make her feel small, out of place, and unwelcome. Eliza turned, a polite smile ready on her lips. "Oh yes, thank you. I was just admiring this one. The design is simply breathtaking." She spoke softly, her voice filled with genuine appreciation. Marcus's lip curled in a barely perceptible sneer. "It is. The 8 Series Grand Coupe. A quarter of $1 million of pure German engineering. Not something one just admires without intent." He let the price hang in the air between them, a glittering wall she was not meant to scale. He was testing her, waiting for her to flinch, to stammer, to retreat. Eliza, however, remained placid. Her smile didn't falter. "I understand. It's a significant investment." Her calmness seemed to irritate him further. It was as if she didn't understand the rules of this game, a game he was the undisputed master of. He decided to be more direct. "Look, madam," he began, dropping the thin pretense of courtesy. "This is a high-end establishment. Our clients are very specific. Perhaps a dealership more suited to your budget would be a better use of your time. There's a very reputable used car lot just a few miles down the highway." The insult was delivered with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel, sharp and deep. Several other salespeople, all dressed in similarly sharp suits, had stopped their quiet conversations to watch the exchange. A wealthy-looking couple browsing a nearby SUV glanced over, a look of faint, smug amusement on their faces. The air grew thick with unspoken judgment. Eliza felt the sting of their collective gaze, 100 tiny pinpricks on her skin. Her smile finally faded, replaced by a look of quiet disappointment. She looked at Marcus, not with anger, but with a deep, searching sadness. "You see this coat," she said, her voice still soft but now carrying a new weight, "and you see poverty. You look at my hands, and you don't see a diamond, so you assume they are empty. You have judged the book by its cover, sir, and it's a very poor reading." For a moment her directness caught him off guard, but his arrogance was a fortress. "It's not a reading," he scoffed. "It's experience. Now, if you'll please excuse me, I have actual clients to attend to. I must ask you to leave." He gestured vaguely towards the glass doors, a dismissive flick of the wrist. It was a public shaming, cold and efficient. Eliza looked around the silent, watching faces one last time. She saw no kindness, no empathy, only the cold, hard reflection of polished metal and polished indifference. She gave a single, slow nod. She didn't argue. She didn't raise her voice. She simply turned and walked away, her quiet dignity her only shield against the wave of humiliation that followed her out into the gray afternoon. As the heavy glass door hissed shut behind her, Marcus chuckled to his colleagues, a low, cruel sound. "Some people," he said, shaking his head, "they just don't know their place." The chill from the dealership clung to Eliza all the way home, a damp cold that had nothing to do with the weather. Her home was the complete antithesis of that glass and steel box. It was a place of warm woods, soft fabrics, and shelves overflowing with books, not brochures. It was a space built from love and shared memories, not calculated for effect. It smelled of old paper and brewing tea, a sanctuary of substance in a world obsessed with surfaces. Her husband, Arthur, was in his study, a room where the only gleam came from the gentle patina on his old mahogany desk. He was a man who, like his home, possessed a quiet, comfortable strength. He was dressed in a simple cashmere sweater, his focus on a stack of financial reports spread before him. When Eliza entered, he looked up, and his smile was the sun breaking through the clouds. But he saw it instantly. The faint tremor in her hands as she set down her bag, the way her shoulders were held just a little too tightly, the shadow that dimmed the usual light in her eyes. He was a man who had learned to read the nuances of his wife's soul the way a sailor reads the sky. He didn't press her. He simply stood, walked over, and wrapped his arms around her, enveloping her in a warmth that began to melt the icy shell of her humiliation. "Tough day in the world, my love?" he asked softly into her hair. She nodded, her face pressed against his chest. "The world can be a very loud place," she murmured. "It tries to tell you what you're worth." Arthur held her for a long moment, letting his steadfast presence be her anchor. "And did you listen?" he asked. She shook her head. "No, I listened to what it didn't say." They stood there in silence, a silent communion of two people who understood each other perfectly. Later, over tea in their sun-drenched kitchen, she told him everything. She recounted the condescending tone, the dismissive wave, the cold, appraising eyes of Marcus Thorne. She described the feeling of being judged and found wanting based on nothing more than the age of her coat. Arthur listened without interruption, his expression calm, but a new, hard intensity settled in his gaze. It was not the explosive anger of a man whose pride was wounded, but the focused, calculated anger of a man whose deepest values had been violated. He wasn't insulted that they had misjudged his wife's wealth. He was incensed that they had failed to see her worth. The two were, in his mind, entirely different things. When she finished, he reached across the table and took her hand. "He judged the cover of the most beautiful book in my library," he said, his voice quiet but resonant with a steel resolve. "And he did so in a temple of his own making. I think it's time we remind these people what a real investment looks like." A plan began to form, not in a flurry of shouted words or vengeful pronouncements, but in the quiet, shared understanding between them. It was a plan not for revenge, but for education, a lesson in humility, delivered with surgical precision. Eliza looked at him, seeing the determined set of his jaw. "What are you thinking, Arthur?" He gave her a small, reassuring smile, but his eyes held a formidable glint. "I'm thinking," he said, tapping a thoughtful finger on the stack of financial reports he'd been reading earlier, "that some businesses are built on a very fragile foundation, and a little tremor can go a long way." The rest of the evening was quiet. They spoke of books, of art, of the garden they would plant in the spring. But beneath the calm surface, a decision had been made. A powerful current was now moving, silent and unseen, towards the glass cathedral and the arrogant priest who presided over it. The next morning, as the sun cast long shadows across the city, the plan was set in motion with a series of quiet phone calls, each one a perfectly placed stone that would trigger an avalanche. The following day dawned bright and clear, and at Thorne Automotive the mood was one of smug prosperity. Marcus Thorne was in his element, holding court in the center of the showroom. He was recounting his version of the previous day's events, embellished for dramatic effect, to a group of junior salesmen who hung on his every word. "You have to be a gatekeeper," he was saying, gesturing expansively with a hand that sported a ridiculously oversized watch. "You have to protect the brand. Our clientele doesn't want to be browsing for their next six-figure vehicle next to someone who looks like they took the bus to get here." He laughed, and the others dutifully joined in, a chorus of sycophantic chuckles. "It's about image. Perception is reality." The words hung in the air, a testament to his shallow philosophy. At that exact moment, a deep, resonant hum, almost too low to be heard but felt as a vibration in the polished concrete floor, silenced them. Every head in the showroom turned towards the massive plate glass windows that formed the front wall. A shadow fell over them, long and impossibly elegant. Into view glided a vehicle that made every other car in the showroom look like a common toy. It was a Rolls Royce Phantom, its body a flawless, mirror-like expanse of midnight blue, so deep it seemed to absorb the light itself. It didn't just arrive, it made an entrance. It moved with the silent, stately grace of a royal barge, coming to a perfect, whisper-quiet stop directly in front of the main doors. For a full 10 seconds, the entire dealership was frozen in a state of collective awe. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. Then, the spell broke. Marcus Thorne's face, which had been a mask of slack-jawed wonder, transformed. His eyes widened with a sudden, frantic avarice. This was not a client. This was a whale, the kind of sale that legends and massive commissions were made of. He smoothed his suit, which suddenly felt cheap, and barked at his subordinates. "What are you all standing around for? Look alive!" He practically sprinted towards the door, his mind racing, rehearsing his most sophisticated greetings. A chauffeur, dressed in a crisp charcoal-gray uniform, emerged from the driver's side. He moved with an unhurried professionalism that spoke of years of service to the truly wealthy. He walked to the rear passenger door and opened it with a reverent sweep. A single exquisitely polished black leather shoe appeared, followed by a man who unfolded himself from the car's plush interior with an easy, understated grace. It was Arthur. He was dressed in a simple but impeccably tailored charcoal suit. There was no flashy jewelry, no gaudy tie. His power wasn't announced, it was simply present, an aura of unshakable confidence and quiet authority that filled the space around him. Marcus arrived, slightly out of breath, his face plastered with a wide predatory smile. "Good morning, sir. Welcome to Thorne Automotive." Marcus Thorne, general manager. He extended his hand, which Arthur took with a firm, cool grip. A magnificent vehicle, truly the pinnacle of automotive luxury. Are you perhaps looking to add to your collection today? Arthur's eyes twinkled with a faint, almost imperceptible amusement. He surveyed the dealership, his gaze sweeping over the fawning salesmen, the gawking staff, and the gleaming cars. "Not exactly," he said, his voice calm and level, carrying easily in the suddenly hushed air. "I'm not here to buy a car." Marcus's smile faltered for a fraction of a second, a flicker of confusion in his eyes. Was this some kind of joke? "Oh, well, we do have an exceptional service center for a vehicle of this caliber." He was cut off by Arthur's next words, delivered with the same placid calm, but with the weight of a falling anvil. "No, you misunderstand," Arthur said, turning, his gaze from the showroom to lock it directly onto Marcus's. "I'm not here to buy a car. I'm here to buy the building." The silence that followed Arthur's statement was absolute. It was a profound, vacuum-like void that sucked all the air and arrogance out of the showroom. Marcus Thorne stood frozen, his hand still tingling from Arthur's handshake, his ingratiating smile locked on his face like a grotesque mask. The words echoed in his mind, nonsensical and yet terrifyingly clear. By the building. He blinked, his brain struggling to process the information. It was like a computer trying to run a program for which it had no code. A nervous laugh escaped his lips, high-pitched and unnatural. "Sir, that's a very good one. A man of humor, I see. This entire property, the franchise, it's part of the Thorn Automotive Group, a multi-city enterprise. It's not exactly for sale." He was trying to regain control, to steer the conversation back to familiar territory, back to cars and commissions. But Arthur hadn't moved. His expression remained one of serene, unshakable certainty. "Everything is for sale, Mr. Thorn," Arthur said, his voice dropping slightly, becoming more serious. "It's simply a matter of finding the right price and a motivated seller." Before Marcus could formulate another desperate response, the chauffeur, who had been standing by with silent patience, moved to the other side of the Rolls Royce. He opened the rear door with the same graceful sweep as before. And from the deep, leather-scented interior, a second figure emerged. It was Eliza. She stepped out onto the concrete, wearing the exact same simple gray wool coat from the day before. She carried the same well-worn leather bag. She was the same woman, but everything was different. She stood beside Arthur, not behind him, an equal partner in the quiet storm that was about to break. The moment of recognition hit Marcus like a physical blow. His jaw, which had been set in a strained smile, dropped open. The color drained from his face, replaced by a ghastly mottled pallor. He stared at Eliza, then at Arthur, then back at Eliza, the connection finally horrifyingly clicking into place in his mind. The woman he had scorned, the woman he had dismissed as worthless, the woman he had kicked out of his temple of wealth had returned, and she had brought an avenging angel with her. The whispers started among the staff. It's her, the woman from yesterday." The smug amusement on the faces of the other salespeople had vanished, replaced by dawning horror and a frantic, self-preserving fear. They suddenly felt the cold judgment of the situation turning back on them. They were complicit. They had watched. They had smirked. And now they were terrified. Eliza's eyes met Marcus's. There was no malice in her gaze, no gloating triumph. There was only that same profound, quiet sadness he had seen yesterday, a disappointment in his failure as a human being. That look was more damning than any tirade could have been. Arthur finally broke the spell. He took a step forward, his presence commanding the complete attention of everyone present. He addressed Marcus, but his voice was clear and steady, intended for all to hear. "Yesterday, my wife, Eliza, came here with a simple, honest intention," he began. "She came to look at a car she admired. She has an incredible eye for design and quality, a passion that has been the silent engine behind much of my own success. She came here to appreciate your product." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "And you, Mr. Thorn, you didn't see a customer. You didn't even see a person. You saw a coat. You saw a handbag. You made a judgment based on the most superficial, meaningless metrics imaginable, and you treated her with scorn and disrespect. You threw her out." He gestured from Eliza to the gleaming showroom. "You failed to understand the most fundamental rule of any business, of any human interaction. The value of a person is not what they wear or what they drive. It is who they are. You judged the cover of the book, and in doing so, you revealed your own story to be a very shallow and ugly one." Marcus stammered, his mind a whirlwind of panic. I didn't know. You. If I had known she was your wife, Arthur held up a hand, cutting him off. "That is precisely the point," he said, his voice turning to ice. "It shouldn't matter who she is. Her own dignity should have been enough. Your decency should have been enough." He reached into his suit jacket and pulled out a slim file folder. He opened it and presented a single document to the stunned manager. "As of 8 a.m. this morning, my investment firm completed the acquisition of a controlling interest in the Thorn Automotive Group. The deal was finalized 30 minutes ago. So, you see, Mr. Thorn, I wasn't joking. I did in fact just buy the building." He then turned to Eliza, his expression softening. "And the first order of business for the new ownership," he said, turning back to a pale, trembling Marcus, "is a change in management, one that values people over polish. Mr. Thorne, your services are no longer required. Please have your personal effects cleared out within the hour."